Here we are with Berserk Deluxe Edition, Volume 4. It encompasses volumes 10 through 12 of the manga. So it goes through the point where Guts bangs Casca and then ends when um, Griffith makes his decision halfway through the eclipse portion, which is probably the most famous scene in the manga. From what I'm aware, again, I don't know exactly what happens in Berserk after that specific point. So I for the entirety of this review, and I do think this is a big situation here. For the entirety of my run through of the Berserk manga, I've mostly been covering material I've already seen adapted into the movies. I did watch the movies first. I did enjoy them, and I think I'm going to rewatch them, and I think I'm going to be the sort of person who defends them, honestly, especially after what I have to say here in this review. Um, I feel like I'm enjoying Berserk, enjoying it quite a bit. In fact, it says a lot about something when it just ends and I get angry. It just where's the rest of it? The rest of it is in Volume 5, and oof, and that's not coming out until July. It's legitimately frustrating. It really does feel like a lot like I'm really eating this up. I'm really tearing through these. I think I got through this entire thing in like 3 sessions, not very long sessions either. I've been busy over the past couple of days. I've been tearing through these things left and right, and mostly going through material I've already seen before and already talked about before. It's going to take a lot more. It's going to take a lot more rereads and viewing the movies to really talk about this in depth. But my opinion, and this is just my opinion at this point, I could be completely wrong about this. Um, I do think Berserk is a legitimately good manga, but it has moments that sort of hold it back. It sort of has padding that is completely unnecessary and does nothing but waste time and get in the way of the real plot. What exactly am I talking about here? I think this might actually be my least favorite volume of the deluxe edition because it has the biggest story element that I've had a grievance with. Of course, I've already talked a little bit about some problems I had with Berserk, but this is a problem I think will be exclusive to this sort of this portion of the story. I don't think it's going to really come up again, but it really was glaring to me. Maybe I'm jumping around a bit here because this doesn't happen until like about halfway through, right? But um, essentially, where we left off last time was that um, Griffith is essentially imprisoned within the bowels of the castle, and it's up to his friends, the Band of the Hawk, to rescue him. So essentially, they go on this crazy mission. They partner up with Princess Charlotte, who's kind of involved with this whole Griffith situation, and they sort of go out and they sort of rescue him. That's basically the gist. And Guts and Casca are sort of dealing with the fact that they're sort of a couple now. They have had sex. They didn't string us along. They actually did do it, which is kind of refreshing to see after years and years of like stupid, needless plot. Like, will they or won't they? Like, I've gotten really sick of that in manga and Japanese media in general. It's really nice just to see people just do it for a moment, even if you don't really like the characters involved. And I think I think that is the main thing I am taking away from the manga so far is that I do like Casca a lot more in the manga than I did in the movie. The movies, Casca just seemed like really annoying and sort of out of place and didn't really belong there and sort of basically exists to be raped for drama. And that's kind of a problem I have with Berserk in general, I feel like, is that like it way overuses rape for drama. It's unbelievable how many times Casca almost gets raped in this arc alone. And boy, if you know how it ends, I'm pretty sure you know how angry I'm going to be with Volume 5. But yeah, like it really does feel like every time Casca's in trouble, every time something happens, every time she tries to do anything, ooh, rape, ooh, I'm gonna rape you, ooh, I'm gonna bang guts, ooh, I'm gonna create relationship drama with Griffith. Like it's not. I don't. It feels like Casca almost entirely exists to be a love interest. It's not. It doesn't feel as if she's nearly as fleshed out as a character as Guts and especially not Griffith. She is essentially meant to be the third wheel in this sort of like trinity of characters, like sort of the sort of a person that exists to sort of emphasize the differences between Guts and Griffith and how they handle certain situations and relationships. Like that's the reason she's there. Like that's her entire purpose, and it just mostly kind falls kind of flat for me a lot of the time. Like I don't really enjoy her character all that much. However, there are times in the manga where she's like genuinely cute and genuinely does stuff that's enjoyable. It's like she's more likable in the manga than she was in the movies, and I do think it's because the manga does tend to take more time and pad things out a bit more. So I think in that regard, the manga does sort of excel. But that's also the kind of issue I have here is the padding, and I mentioned that early on. That was kind of my deal. That was kind of my problem with this is that like I felt that the entire sequence when they're running from the dungeon to get away was completely unnecessary, right? I thought it was complete bullshit for a lot of reasons. Namely, namely how it whips out super soldier Midland Army, um, super soldier members of the Midland Army completely out of nowhere, simply to like give the Band of the Hawk something to fight. It's downright ridiculous. Oh, we're going to just the king is so angry. Oh, Griffith escaped. Oh no, I'm so angry. Oh, he's so angry. He's so angry that the man who took the virginity of his daughter waifu is out and escaped. Oh, we're gonna send his top elite squadron of super assassins after them. They're so hardcore. They're so tough. They're so insane. They hail from the Far East, and they're unstoppable. They're one of the strongest forces in Midland Army, and they're defeated in like less than a chapter, I think. Uh, but no worries though. We're gonna send out a devil dog. Oh, we're gonna send out the devil dogs, an entire faction of the Midland Army that that was on as dangerous as the Band of the Hawk, but they're entirely led by criminals. But oh wait, they're led by a creature that's similar to Zod the Immortal, the Apostle from the second volume. I think it was the second deluxe edition volume. I think it was. Oh no, how are they gonna fight this thing? It's completely unnecessary, bogs the entire thing down, and kind of cheapens a lot of aspects, specifically the world building and sort of the overarching themes. I think it messes with the setting and it sort of messes with the continuity because it really does feel with like these super soldiers coming out of nowhere, attacking people, like going after them, um, doing all of this stuff. It really does feel like they came out of nowhere. Like you didn't hear about like when Griffith was winning all these battles for Midland against in the war against Tudor. You didn't hear about these devil dogs. You didn't hear about like, oh, this guy wild, he's almost as strong as Zod the Immortal. Like you didn't hear anything like that. Like they tried justifying it. Oh, they're too dangerous to use against Tudor, but that just kind of flies in the face of what makes them like supposedly such dangerous opponents. They're just as much of a threat as the Band of the Hawk. They're on par with the Band of the Hawk. Then why didn't we hear about them in the war? Like why didn't it ever come up? Like, oh, maybe we can use the devil dogs to take Doldry. Like, why did that not come out at all? Like, it's a lazy. It's inconsistent. Is what I'm getting at. It's just too many acceptable breaks in reality, right? Like, of course, you're going to have to like make some details up as you go along with like crafting your story, right? You're always going to come up with new elements, but like this idea of there being like super soldiers in the Midland Army that no one talked about during that entire 1 year war with Tudor, soldiers that, by the way, are explicitly stated and explicitly are, in Wild's case, to be way more powerful and way more threatening than anything Tudor threw at them in the war, right? Like the most Tudor had was that supposedly impenetrable fortress that Griffith totally penetrated. Like it doesn't work, right? It just feels like it's uninspired, and that just goes. The Raki Baki, the assassins of the Far East are like boring, right? The problem with that is pretty straightforward. They're boring. They come out of nowhere. They're dispatched just as quickly. They're uninspired. I don't care about them at all. And in fact, I can't even remember if that was even their name, the Raki Baki. I'm pretty sure that was, right? I'm pretty sure that was their name, right? But there's a lot more emphasis put on the second group that the king sends after our heroes, the devil dogs. Okay, so we have this entire sequence, right? From the moment they're introduced to the moment that Wild dies, again, it's completely pointless and can easily be left out with losing absolutely nothing. And I think that's the main reason I take so. This is the main reason I am. This is the main issue I have with this edition is the character of Wild, how he's handled, how he's portrayed, how he's drawn, his entire backstory, how he's defeated. It all just comes off like a complete mess. I already talked about like the introductory bit a little bit, like how much I didn't like him, how much I didn't like how he came out of nowhere. Let's talk about what he actually does in the story and what he actually is. Wild is hyped up as being a apostle, like essentially a creature similar to Zod, like something that understands, like something involved with the supernatural. He's like incredibly strong, unbelievably strong, far stronger than normal humans, and no one can match him in battle. And he spends all of his time like going around raping bitches and just murdering people for fun. And that's the entire thing. That's the entire theme of the Devil Dogs, is that they're essentially like a super brutal military group where they go around sort of like attacking, killing people at random and sort of doing whatever they want to sort of win battles, essentially. They're not like Griffith, who puts on this facade of being like this white knight figure. They are criminals, essentially, made up of criminals, comprised of criminals, doing criminal acts, but are still very supposedly feared on the battlefield. I say supposedly because aside from Wild himself, none of them do jack shit. Like, the Band of the Hawk is explicitly stated to be weakened. Like they split their forces in half. They've lost a bunch of people over the past year. Griffith's not available to lead them, and yet they still whoop the shit out of the average Devil Dog unit. The only reason the Devil Dogs are a threat at all, despite explicitly being hyped as being just as good as the Band of the Hawk, is Wild himself, who, like I said before, is an apostle, which of course means he can do the One Punch Man thing of turning into a giant monster, and Guts has to fight him. And even though there's like they're surrounded by like 20 Band of the Hawk members, probably more than that. They're surrounded by all these people. Guts is the only one that does anything, right? Guts is like taking his sword and just barely fighting this guy off, and it's sort of like it's intense. It's well drawn and it's a good fight scene, but it's one of those things, right? Like it's one of those things. Like what purpose does this have for the narrative? It really doesn't serve the overarching story at all. Like when you get right down to it, Guts beats him. He dies. They go away. Oh, but wait, Wild's not quite dead. So he comes back, attacks Guts again while he's in like the wagon with Griffith, and they can't fight back this time. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, ooh, here comes Zod. Who? What happens exactly? I think he kills Wild or something because of like the Behelit. Like Wild comes to find Griffith so he can trigger the Behelit, so he can like call forth the guardian angels, the four members of the Godhead, right? And he doesn't have it. And then Zod basically shows up and is just like, ha ha ha, it's coming back soon, wink wink, and then he goes away again. Like completely pointless. Like there was no reason for Zod to be there. There was no reason for Wild to be there. Like all they did was sort of like just tell us that like, yeah, the Behelit's coming back, guys, and then it does. They couldn't have just have it come back. Like this is the thing that really that I think really sticks out to me. I legitimately do think at this stage in time, I don't want to say I definitely feel this way because I haven't seen the movie in like a year. I think the movie handled it better, where the movies handled this better, where Griffith just loses the Behelit, all hope seems to be lost, and then he just gets it again, as if by magic, as if by fate. Like that, I think impacts the story and emphasizes the themes of what's going on here than what happens in the manga, in which the way it's presented, it feels almost like Zod is masterminding all this. Like, you're doing all this because I am allowing it, and not because of like the higher being that's sort of controlling all of these events, and sort of like chose Griffith to be the fifth member, the fifth and final Godhead. So yeah, I had a big problem with a big chunk of this one. There are things I like. Of course, I think Guts and Casca do have like engaging conversations, and Charlotte and Casca actually have a conversation that I don't believe was in the movie, where they sort of talk about like where they sort of talk about the past and Griffith, and how Charlotte didn't realize Casca was a woman, which I thought was hilarious. It was an interesting conversation, I think, as I recall. But again, I felt like it kind of went on too long, and I kind of wish there was more moments like that. It just feels like for a good chunk of this, there isn't a whole lot of relationships between some of the minor characters, because I do think I'm kind of unusual in this respect. This might be my Nintendo fanboys I'm shining through, but I really like Charlotte as a character. This reminds me of like how I felt about Game of Thrones 2, in which Sansa, of all people, was my favorite character in the books, which is kind of an unusual opinion to have. But I like this idea of this stereotypical princess, innocent princess, sort of like in this sort of dark fantasy setting and sort of like doing her thing in this world where like all this crazy shit is happening. Because like Charlotte's not really getting like the brunt of the action. Like she's being sheltered from it to a certain extent, but like she's still involved, she's still doing things, and she still decided to help Griffith. And her genuine, like she has genuinely seemed to have like completely fallen in love with him. Like Griffith must have dicked her incredibly hard because she does not seem to be wanting to let him go ever. Oh, Griffith, we're going to be forever together forever, which is like a really interesting, I think, sort of a. I really enjoy that about her character, like her sort of misunderstanding of Griffith's character, where she sort of has this idea that like he cares about her too as strongly as she does for him, and it's clearly not true. And that's actually one of the reasons I was interested in actually reading the manga, because I was really interested in seeing what happens to Charlotte specifically. And nothing's happened yet, but we're getting there. We're getting there with Volume 5, which I hope covers more material after the Golden Age. I am going to be so angry if they stop making these deluxe editions like after the eclipse ends. Like, oh, Volume 5 is the last one. That's all you wanted to read. And they're like, no, I wanted all of them. Like, there are like, what, 40 volumes now, right? In total, I think it's 40, if I'm remembering correctly. Is there a list? I think it's 40 total, which is kind of weird since we're on 12. Like, are we really almost halfway through the entire thing? Like, has this really been running since the 80s? It takes that long to put this out. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Like, Berserk is known for its hiatuses, after all. But I don't know. Maybe I underestimated how slowly it goes. Like, I had no idea. I guess I don't know true suffering yet. Like, imagine how angry I'll be when I finally get caught up, like 5 years from now. I thought it would be 5 years from now, but at this rate, like, let's see, 12, yeah, another couple of years, and I should be caught up if they continue putting out these deluxe editions at this pace, and then like I get to suffer along with the rest of you. Oh boy. Let's see here. I am definitely going to have to rewatch my old videos to see what my thoughts were with the movies and the manga and the previous volumes in general, because I'm not sure if I'm like recovering old information yet or ideas I've sort of shared in the past about it. But yeah, I do strongly feel. Okay, so I think I complained enough about the plot. I generally like it, like it quite a bit. Like there are weak aspects that make me think that, like, yeah, this is not my favorite thing ever. I will say that I think I do enjoy Junji Ito's Uzumaki more than this, and I think I might go on record now and say that's probably my favorite manga ever. I don't see Uzumaki ever being adapted into another media. I think it uses the manga concept fabulously well, and like I have problems with Uzumaki as well, right? But I really, really enjoyed it, and I consider it like a masterpiece, right? Berserk, I like it a lot, but I do think I stand by what I said before, man. Like I don't think it's the greatest thing ever made. However, there are things about it that I really, really like. I do love the character of Griffith and his sort of like defining characteristics, his ambition, his dream, his entire plot line, which is kind of the entire driving force of the plot at this point. Like it's incredibly compelling. There is so much here to unpack and talk about. I might wait till volume 5 to really go in depth about like why I love Griffith so much, or probably a complete analyst video in particular. But like Griffith is by far my favorite character, and I actually don't care for Guts nearly as much. And I think I am reaching that point where like I am willing to tell people that yeah, I do think that characters that were influenced by Guts, Cloud Strife, Ike from Path of Radiance, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, I'm sure there are others. I do like those characters more than Guts. I don't find Guts's like struggle and his oh, I need to find my own dream. Oh, I want to be friends with the girlfriend. I don't find that interesting. Like that kind of goes against the entire point of like sort of being your own person and sort of like finding your own ambition. Like Guts is basically revolving his entire life around Griffith. It's true that he tries to distance himself from it, but then he comes right back when shit goes down. It's just I don't find Guts that interesting, aside from how strong he is as like a relatively, I say relatively here, a relatively realistically handled swordsman with like no real superpowers. He just has a big ass sword and knows how to use it, and that kind of in itself is kind of a lot of fun to watch, to read. You know, like it's so it's uh, the Black Swordsman arc, I think, and I think the reason the first volume, right? I think the reason why that was my favorite, aside from like being new material that I hadn't really read before, I think I really enjoyed the action in that one. Just the crazy shit that like Guts does on a regular basis. It just I like just the way he goes up those stairs and just swats aside those arrows. I like all the stuff he has, the people he fights. I found like that snake guy at the beginning like really cool and like way better than freaking Wild. Uh, the Count guy too. Yeah, that guy was way cooler. I it's been like this for the past couple of deluxe editions, man. I just want the golden age to be over. There are things I like about it, but like I'm ready to move on, man. I want some new material. I haven't even gotten through the eclipse yet, and I'm already just like, okay, what happens after that? Because I already know, right? Like I already know what happens. I already know. I've seen the movie, right? Like I'm completely prepared for it. I was just laughing about it at work, to be honest with you, the other day. Like, oh, I'm reading Berserk. The ending. Yeah, someone had seen the movies and was talking about like how much he didn't like the ending, and I laughed at him, and I felt like, holy shit, I'm kind of an asshole. Uh, oh man, this is why I don't talk about stuff at work. I tend to spurg out, as I'm sure you're aware. Uh, what do I think about it? Volume four. I do think it's the weakest one. I think that like I liked Volume three had like Volume three had that like the sex scene between Charlotte and Griffith. It had like all this drama. It had all this stuff going on. Volume two, I think that was the one, yeah, where we got introduced to everything. They sort of like established all these plot lines that weren't really in the movies, which I did enjoy. I just didn't like this Wild thing, to be honest with you. That kind of bogged the whole thing down. Like the beginning of this, volume 10, where Guts is like hanging out with Casca, where they're sort of like meeting with Charlotte and doing these things until the Rabigauri or whatever they are. Hang on, I'm so put off by this. Like until those things show up, those guys show up, I feel as if it's reasonably good. I found it reasonably enjoyable. Then it just sort of like covered material I've seen before, and it just isn't all that interesting for the most part. Um, but yeah, that's only like a small chunk of it near the middle. It like picks up again near the end. This is the one that has the famous, probably one of my favorite. exchanges in Berserk so far. The road to the castle sequence. I might as well read it aloud just so you know what I'm talking about here. Let's see. If you want to go all the way to the castle, you'll have to pile up many, many more corpses. Yeah, what's wrong? Are you afraid now? Do you want to turn back? You mustn't. Don't think that way. If you do that, this time you'll become one of these corpses. See? Look down at your own arms and legs. So yeah, by far my probably oh maybe not by far, but like probably one of my favorite exchanges in Berserk is that like entire sequence of like see that castle? It could be yours. It's a if you pile up many more bodies, if you continue along this path. I you are so close to realizing your dream, but you have to do something truly reprehensible to get there. I love that. I think it's like an amazing moment, and I do think that I think that might be the reason why I do prefer the movies because it cuts out the stuff that doesn't really work all that well, like Wild, like these super assassins, and then it sort of keeps the stuff that does work, like the whole bit, like the invasion of Daldry, the Advent, Charlotte having sex, Griffith having sex with Charlotte, all of this stuff. I think is Guts and Griffith meeting for the first time, like the truly iconic, memorable goat, greatest of all time moments of Berserk, are present in the movies without like any of the padding that sort of holds it back and sort of like makes it kind of not really a slog, but sort of a keeps it from being flawless. Like sort of is sort of noticeably a blister on this otherwise perfectly enjoyable plot line. Perfectly enjoyable. Uh, I will say before I sign off today, I do think people do a lot like Game of Thrones. I think people do overstate how complex and deep Berserk actually is because when you get right down to it, it's about a guy with a giant sword who wants to kill another guy. It's a revenge story. It's not anything super complex or deep, but it doesn't need to be. You know what I mean? Like it just needs to be Berserk. It just needs to be something that people want to read and want to enjoy. And I am, in spite of all of my problems with it, enjoying it. I do. I am picking up Volume Five, Deluxe Edition Volume Five, for sure. And if they don't put out more of these hardcover volumes, I'm gonna have to go with the paperback. I'm not looking forward to that at all. Like this is gonna clog up my shelf. I have so much manga already. It's clogging up an entire bookshelf, and it's just, man, it's unreal. But anyway, yeah, that's Berserk Volume Four. Probably my least favorite entry so far. But there are things enjoyable about it. It is part of like an ongoing going series that I am enjoying, and it's not like destroying the narrative or anything like that. Like I don't hate it or anything. It's just there are things it could have done better, and that is always something to keep in mind.